Democratic Labour Party strongholds like St. John and St. Lucie. The 2018 election also saw the first female leader of the Barbados Labour Party, Mia Amor Motley, become Barbados's first female prime minister. In the days after, Bishop Joseph Atherley, who won the seat in St. Michael's Central on the BLP ticket, would cross the floor to form Her Majesty's opposition at the time under the banner of a new party called the People's Party for Democracy and Development. The announcement of the 2022 general elections has seen the presentation of several parties and new candidates. There are 7 political parties and 8 independent candidates, and for the first time, both major political parties are being led by women. Verla de Pisa, who leads the Democratic Labour Party, and Prime Minister Mia Amor Motley, who leads the Barbados Labour Party. They have each shared the contents of their manifestos, and tonight, Barbados decides who will take the country forward for the next 5 years. Our election night broadcast, Barbados Decides 2022, is led by anchor Shane Seeley with moderator, veteran journalist Sanka Price.
Good evening, I'm Shane Seeley, and welcome to CBC's live presentation of Barbados Decides 2022. We're bringing you full coverage of today's general elections. We do take this opportunity to welcome those of you Barbadians at home and abroad to our simulcast across all of our CBC stations and networks, those being TV8, 94.7 FM, 100.7 QFM, and cbc.bb on Facebook and on YouTube. We're broadcasting across the region as well, thanks to our media partners, One Caribbean Television and CMC, which includes the New York tri-state area. Also with us tonight, NBC Radio in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, ABS Television and Radio in Antigua and Barbuda, and NCN in Guyana. Good evening to all of our viewers and listeners across the region and across the world. Just as a reminder, this 2022 general election was called on December 27th, just 2 days after Christmas and a few days before New Year's celebrations began. The Prime Minister, Mia Amor Motley, called a snap election scheduled for today, January the 19th, allowing just 23 days of campaigning and for those stepping into the ring to reach the electorate. The 2022 election sees 108 candidates representing 7 parties, including 9 independents, contesting 30 constituencies. Add to that snapshot the first general election being held during a pandemic. With all the health protocols in place, Barbadians took to the polls this morning from 6 o'clock right until 6 this evening. And we will be tracking all 30 constituencies and the major party headquarters of the Barbados Labour Party, the incumbent led by the Prime Minister, Mia Amor Motley, located at Grantley Adams House in Robert Street, the city. Also in the city, George Street Auditorium, the home of the Democratic Labour Party, led by Verla de Pisa. And a CBC reporter is stationed at Astrodomus in Strathclyde, St. Michael. That's the headquarters of the Alliance Party for Progress, led by Bishop Joseph Atherley. Grenville Phillips, the head of Solutions Barbados, he's in studio with us tonight. So stay tuned for all of those live reports, because tonight, Barbados, you decide. In studio tonight, we have our very own moderator, CEO of the Caribbean Broadcasting Corporation, Sanka Price, political strategist Hartley Henry, political scientist Dr. George Bell is online, real estate professional Trevor Seeley of the APP, also attorney at law Pearson Leacock of the Democratic Labour Party, and former diplomat Liz Thompson is back with us, and she's of the Barbados Labour Party. And as previously mentioned, Grenville Phillips of Solutions Barbados. Welcome to you all. Now, before we hear from tonight's panel, let's go into the constituencies and hear directly from those reporters who are stationed in the ridings that we're paying very close attention to, starting with St. Michael Northeast, where the incumbent Prime Minister Mia Amor Motley has won the seat 6 consecutive times. Our Cassandra Crawford is there at St. Matthew's Primary School. Cassandra, what's the mood like there?
Thank you so much, Shane, and good evening to our viewers. It is literally very quiet here at St. Matthew's Primary. This is the constituency, as Shane said, of St. Michael Northeast. And of course, just to tell you a little bit about this constituency, it was established since 1971. There are 8,087 voters in this constituency, and there are 9 polling stations. So voters of that legal age would have been heading out this morning from 6 a.m. Right through to 6 p.m. As it goes, as the rules go, as long as you're in line by 6 p.m., you get your opportunity to vote. So that would have taken place. That would have taken place. There are 3 candidates in this constituency. Of course, as Shane alluded to, Barbados Labour Party candidate, the incumbent Prime Minister and leader of the Barbados Labour Party, Mia Amor Motley. There is also the Democratic Labour Party candidate, Damien Griffith, and there is the Barbados Freedom Party candidate, Roy Turney. So this evening, I can tell you that at least 2 buses would have arrived, as far as I am aware, bearing ballot boxes. On my last check, the counting had not begun, but it may very well have started by now. The last bus would have backed into the parking area here, just in front of the counting station here at St. Matthew's, with that other set of ballot boxes. The returning officer here is Ms. Gwendolyn Bridgman Bushell, and so we will be keeping you updated. We will be getting those counts and feeding that information to our call center at our studios at CBC in the Pine. And of course, when that final count comes in, Shane, we will definitely have that live report for you. So until then, it's a very quiet space right now, but the returning officer was definitely busy getting everything set up on my arrival just after 6 to ensure that counting went smoothly. So it's back to you in studio.
Thank you so much, Cassandra. We know that you'll be keeping us updated as the night progresses. Of course, as Cassandra mentioned, those constituency, the polling stations would have closed at 6 p.m. But if you were in the line at that time, you would still be allowed to cast your vote. And that pushed back our broadcast a bit as we awaited the closing of those polling stations. But as Cassandra mentioned, and as I mentioned here, 6 consecutive times for the Prime Minister, Sanka, and she could be setting what would be a record tonight.
And good evening to everyone in Barbados and across the Caribbean. On the point of Prime Minister Motley being elected for the 7th consecutive time tonight, she will become the first female ever to be the senior member of parliament, having been continuously elected since 1994. But you know, the real question, Shane, and what most Barbadians are wondering about is whether the Prime Minister's bold gamble to call this general election 18 months early will result in another 30-0 red wash, or will she lose several seats to a resurgent Democratic Labour Party? And to discuss this and many other issues over the next few hours, we have veteran political scientist Dr. George Bell, who is of course online. And in the studio to my right is the renowned regional political strategist Hartley Henry, and beside him is leader of Solutions Barbados, Grenville Phillips II. To my immediate left, representing the Alliance Party for Progress, is Trevor Seeley. Next is the representative of the Democratic Labour Party, Pearson Leacock. And to my far left is Barbados Labour Party representative, Liz Thompson.
Good evening.
Good evening to one and all. Dr. Bell, our first question goes to you. Briefly, what was unique about campaigning for this poll? Can you share some of your thoughts on the highs and the lows and the differences of this campaign to previous ones?
Well, the thing that is clearly different is the fact that the pandemic was in place and innovations had to be made by all parties to engage. And that would obviously have been unusual. The innovations would have been unusual for the electorate. I think largely a lot of people would have relied then on the technology rather than actually going to the meetings. And I think the parties use a technique of spot meetings. So some people question because they seem to be more than spot meetings in terms of the number of the speakers and so on. But it was a way of reaching more directly into the communities so that people would have less exposure. And I think that was the main difference. The other difference is that it was the earliest call for an election in Barbados. And that strange condition would have been increased by, in its effect, by the fact that it was unexpected at the particular time. It's not that people did not expect an election in 2022, because I think enough signals were given by the Barbados Labour Party that something was going to happen this year. But to call it immediately after Christmas, I think that is what would have taken people off guard. I think that another thing that would have been unusual would be the swift preparation that the other parties would have had to take on.
Dr. Bell, let's jump in here, Dr.
Yes.
Bell. Let me just jump in here and get
Yes.
The political strategist Hartley Henry on this one as well. In terms of, was it a major surprise? How did the Prime Minister actually literally catch the other parties with their pants down?
Thank you very much, Sank, and good evening to viewers and listeners and across the region, and Barbados, of course. Yeah, I think there was a level of surprise. It is interesting that there was this the discussion with respect to the timing of the calling of the election, because for persons of my generation, and certainly myself, it was deja vu. Because while I find it interesting that Barbadians are discussing now the fact that the Prime Minister called an election on Boxing Day, or the holiday marking Boxing Day, the 27th, I recalled in 1998 myself as a candidate for the Democratic Labour Party in an election, coming home on the 22nd of December to spend Christmas with my family and to return on the 2nd of December, only to get a call on Boxing Day morning, the 26th of December 1998, that Parliament had been dissolved and the Prime Minister after that called an election. So it's a bit of a surprise that persons have responded or reacted to the calling of an election on Boxing Day, because reality is it was not the first time. But I think in the context of, and therefore we were caught at the time, the Democratic Labour Party, we were caught totally off guard. And I recall my colleagues then saying it was acknowledging that it was a great move. So now, I find it very interesting that it has happened the second time that we're having this level of discussion. But certainly, I think that there was an element of surprise. I think we saw candidate nominations being hurried towards the end of last year. And I think a keen student of politics should have recognized at the time that something was in the air. So it's a bit unfortunate in my view that political parties were caught as off guard, as obviously they were.
Okay, and then we'll go now to the Democratic Labour Party. Were you caught off guard? The song from the Barbados Labour Party says, "Them ain't ready yet." What say you, Mr. Leacock?
Good night, Barbadians. Good night, fellow panelists. The Democrat Labour Party was not caught off guard. we were in the field for 2 years prior to the calling of the general elections. And what surprised us though is that it came at a time when we were in a pandemic and there was a spike, the spike of the Omicron variant, the very contagious Omicron variant. That was the only surprise. But the candidates of the Democratic Labour Party were in the field canvassing 2 years prior to this announcement by the Prime Minister.
Can you say the same thing for the alliance, Mr. Seeley? Trevor?
Well, I can't even say it was caught because I was not even in a party. But it's interesting in terms of what we were going through for the last year or two. And I, for one, wanted to see something different. And when it did appear that we were going to polling and elections, I took the opportunity to get out of my comfort zone and get into it. Because I tend to just watch what's going on in the political arena. I had no idea of one day getting involved. But the opportunity came and I said I couldn't sit back, and I got into the arena, and later found out that Bishop Joseph Atherley and Lynette Eastman was coming together, and I saw this as my opportunity to be part of the fray, in a sense, and not just watch on the sidelines, but get involved to hopefully bring a better change to this country and to this island.
All right, let's go to Mr. Grenville Phillips. Grenville, you made the point several times in broadcasts that you thought the election was wrong. The election should not have been called. So were you caught by surprise?
No, that wasn't me. We would never say that the election should not have been called. That was someone else. We did not expect it at that time, I must say that. Nevertheless, the Prime Minister is well within her right to call an election whenever she feels that it will benefit her party. And I think it was perhaps the optimum time to benefit her party. So in that regard, it was a brilliant strategic move. We did not expect it at that time, but nevertheless, we were prepared. So during that first week, we got 11 candidates nominated. We designed our manifesto and we got the manifestos printed. And then during the second week, we distributed the manifestos then to the households who would be voting for our candidates. And then we had this third week. So we were prepared, but we did not expect it on that date. Yes.
All right, let's go to Liz Thompson. Clearly, based on even what comments we've heard here, it would seem to me, and I think, that the move by the Prime Minister was a very strategic one. How has the Barbados Labour Party benefited from that, in your view, based on how the campaign went?
We'll know in a few hours.
And with those few words, I'll put you right back to Shane.
Thank you, Sanka. And of course, a lot of discussion will be generated as we take you through the night. But let's go up north now to St. Lucie. A homeboy is there, our very own Sherwood McCaskey. He is watching developments there at the Darrell Jordan Secondary School. Sherwood, tell us what's the mood like at Darrell Jordan.
Well, thank you, Shane. In fact, it's the most modern counting station on the island. And I can tell you that the transport bus, two transport buses traveling around that were collected from many countries and all of them. Coming to the part of that quickly remove them into water. A lot
Okay, Sherwood, we'll come back to you when we get a better connection. There's a little bit of an issue with the audio, but we'll try to get that sorted out. But we'll take a commercial break right now, and when we come back, we'll continue the discussion right here as Barbados Decides 2022. We'll be back in a moment. Decides 2022. Of course, we'll be taking you to every constituency tonight to let you know what is happening there. You went out this morning early to cast your vote. Many Barbadians were at those polling stations right across the country from very early. We had our Shane Jones monitoring the situation in St. Philip North and West. And we had a number of our reporters out as well, just looking at developments there. But of course, we will continue to share the data with you as it comes in. Of course, the counting should soon start at some of those polling stations, and we will be sharing that with you right here on our magic wall. Sanka, so a lot to still talk about. Up north is Verla de Pisa. That's her, that's his constituency. She is contesting this time around. She's not a first timer to the polls, but she's decided to go to St. Lucie.
Quite frankly, Shane, Verla de Pisa is fighting for her political future right now. That is on the line here. She's a two-time loser, having been unsuccessful in 2013 and 2018 in Christchurch West. And another loss will likely spell the end of her leadership ambitions in the DLP and possibly her political future. Pearson, what's your assessment of your president's chances in St. Lucie, given that your last representative, Dennis Kelman, won 3 consecutive polls, but in each year he saw a decline in the margin of victory?
I believe that the president of the Democratic Labour Party, Ms. Verla de Pisa, will win the St. Lucie seat. We are very confident and upbeat about our chances there in St. Lucie. And the feedback on the ground from the constituents suggests that they're ready for a change. A lot of them are very annoyed that there is in excess of 6,000 people who were disenfranchised from voting because they're COVID positive and are in a isolation facility or at home isolating, and they're not permitted to vote. That is one of the major, I don't want to, probably it is an unintended consequence of the snap election, especially given the fact that there were provisions for such persons to vote in other territories like St. Vincent. So Ms. Verla de Pisa will win St. Lucie.
Thank you very much, Pearson. You seem to be very certain of that. We go back to Dr. Bell. What do you think are Ms. de Pisa's chances in St. Lucie, based on how the campaign has gone so far?
Just get rid of the disenfranchisement issue as quickly as possible. That we can't calculate which constituency that would impact on, because that's going to be, we don't even know how many Ds or how many Bs will constituted in that, in the set of people that are isolated or ill. And we certainly can't focus on St. Lucie with that. So I think that is an immaterial point right now, because again, those numbers can be scattered across the entire electorate. and they could become then quite negligible. But in Miss the Pisa, I saw her campaigning in Crab Hill and saying that Crab Hill will be really a turning point for the election in St. Lucie. And that might be so. She's on the ground, so she should know what is going on. I also saw a change in her performance at the beginning of the campaign.
Dr. Bell, I do apologize for this. We do have to take a break right now for the lottery, and we'll be right back just after this commercial break.
For life, sleep right. The mattress professional for sleep. Barbados decides. Coverage of the 2022 general elections on the stations of the CBC is sponsored by Amaze Inc. Come in and be amazed. We have what you need. Cooperators General Insurance Company Limited. You are not just a policyholder, you are an owner. Great Health Works. Agents for Omega XL. Sleep right. For the rest of your life, sleep right. The mattress professional for sleep. Lavada's Laundry Inc. Lavada's unmatched professional services. ProSecure Distributors Limited. The place for professional people. Career Development Institute. Empowering people, changing lives. Julie's Bridal Gowns. Julie's Bridal Rentals. One call does it all. Pedialyte. Live hydrated and Glucerna. Live every moment.
MCTV customers are asked to note that due to a recent system update, some customers may receive a message asking them to update their MCTV box. Customers are advised to press OK on their MCTV remote to activate the system update. For further details or assistance, please contact MCTV.
Wake up to a brand new day of news and interviews. Wake up for the morning report and the latest on what's happening in news from 6 a.m. with Shane Seeley. Then join me, Pearson, and see ourselves celebrating who we are when Morning Barbados starts at 6:30. So wake up with us Monday to Friday in the morning.
Stay informed with the news. Team CBC is on the job, making sure you get accurate and complete coverage in the midday.
The Broom, and this is Newsday.
There are 10 reasons to advertise. Here's one. Advertising creates brand loyalty. It can help you form a lasting connection with your customers. There are many places to advertise. Here's one. CBC News Night, reaching more of your potential customers than any other.
Back with you with our live election coverage, and I can tell you that counting has started in a number of constituencies. As our reporters get the information, we will bring it to you right here on Barbados Decides 2022. As you know, there is a lot of interest right across the region. And we go now to Trinidad to find out why they're so interested in the elections here in Barbados. We have Josanne Leonard with us. She is a media and communications consultant in Trinidad and Tobago, joining us live. She will be joining us in a matter of moments. So we'll have some context there from Trinidad and Tobago. Of course, we have some partners as well in St. Vincent and the Grenadines and in Antigua and Barbuda. And we'll be connecting with some of them as we go through tonight's broadcast. Just to give you an update on some of those areas that counting has started, I can tell you one of them is St. Michael Central, also in St. Michael East and St. George North. Let's now go to Josanne. She is live with us. Josanne Leonard, media and communications consultant over in Trinidad and Tobago. Josanne, so good to have you on the program here with us as Barbados decides in this general election. Talk about the interest over there in the Twin Island Republic.
Right. Okay. Sorry about that technology. Thank you so much for that warm welcome. And I'm really happy to be joining you to sort of chime in on this very important election in Barbados. I think I just caught when you said what is the interest? I'm getting a bit of feedback, so I'll try to cope. About the interest in Trinidad and Tobago, and I would dare say around the region. And I think it largely has to do with the style of leadership and the quality of leadership. Some may argue that Mia Motley has ushered in with the government in 2018 and the kind of impact that she's had. And I'd like to talk a little more about that as the evening goes along. But I know that tonight is a lot about counting ballot boxes and having the local experts talk about the interpretation of the manifesto and just what the feel on the ground is. But I just thought I would posit that from my own perspective, I think it's a very important election for Barbados, but it's a very, very important period for the region as we're grappling with so many issues and coming out of this COVID experience, which of course was a whammy on everyone. And that issue of leadership sometimes is lost in the day-to-day in the day-to-day runnings of a country and the things that people see as their basic needs for goods and services. But the Caribbean has really been given a tremendous boost and fillip in the person of Mia Motley, and I make no apologies for saying that. And I think that if there was an election in the region to elect a Caribbean Prime Minister, I think she would be head and shoulders above everyone. So I think I'd like to explore some of those kinds of themes while you in Barbados are looking at the more granular issues, the issues on the ground, and doing all of the interpretation and hopefully giving us all a better understanding of what the polls, the return of the polls are reflecting. So I guess that's a good place to stop for the minute.
If I may jump in here, but Prime Minister Motley has been portrayed locally, certainly by the Democratic Labour Party, as being a dictator and a bully. And then you're saying that her style of leadership matters. How do you respond to that?
I think, as I said, I'm getting a bit of delay here, so we'll try to correct that. So I respond by saying what I alluded to previously coming in. I'll give you an example. When Prime Minister Motley assumed the chair of CARICOM and the heads were meeting here in Trinidad and Tobago, every single person in the media, apart from the fact that this is the current chair, wanted to speak with her, wanted to interview her, wanted to hear what she had to say on various issues. And we must remember that in terms of CARICOM, she even in the very early stages tried to push through or attempted to push through some policy space of issues that may not necessarily be supported by the old guard and the old boys. So she was pushing the envelope. Another situation that I saw that was incredibly remarkable my WhatsApp is full of messages that people want me to share with you tonight, was she popped in on way to Guyana, I think it was. I'm not too clear now, but it was over the carnival period or just before carnival. It was the weekend before. And we have something called pan curl in Trinidad and Tobago, in which the judges move around all of the panyards, the different zones. And so you just have the big event in the savannah at the very end. Every single place that Mia Motley went, there were throngs of people wanting to touch, wanting to speak, wanting to get a selfie. It was the most amazing thing to witness. And I say that because I don't think that there's any leader, any Caribbean leader in our present dispensation who can claim that kind of gravitas. Now you have figures like,
Oh, Josanne, well, I'm figuring you're getting some instructions from our production crew, but we do welcome that contribution, and we expect to hear a lot more from you as the night progresses. But you painted a picture there that we've seen right across the world at major meetings where the Prime Minister, Mia Motley, went. She was sought after not only by the average journalist, but what one would consider what would be the world's leading journalist in Christiane Amanpour. She had her on a number of times, and it's something that I think many people, Sanka, like to call the Mia Motley effect, where so many people, as you heard there in Trinidad, but around the world, have gravitated towards the Prime Minister.
Yeah, yes, Shane. The question basically in Barbados that we have to deal with locally is how impactful has that been for Barbados's image? And I think no better person can speak towards that than Liz Thompson, who has been on the world stage herself. Ambassador Thompson, Mia Motley's image, how has that helped Barbados over the last 3.5 years?
I think that it has helped Barbados tremendously. The Prime Minister is now chair or co-chair of several important international bodies, from the World Bank and IMF to the WHO with antimicrobials. I can tell you that I was part of the delegation that went to Glasgow for the climate change meeting, and it was amazing watching her, watching the adulation, and quite frankly, basking in her glory. Ordinarily, and this is not the glory of the Sandyford type. Ordinarily, if you're a Black person or a Caribbean national, they will tend to ask you, are you from Jamaica? But every Black person was at that meeting. Are you from Barbados? Is Mia Motley your Prime Minister? People just wanted to meet her. They wanted to be with her. She opened doors for Barbados because people were saying, can we have Barbados's opinion on this? How will Barbados vote on that? The fact that SDRs, the special drawing rights, was even included in the text at all had to do with the work that Barbados did on the ground and the position that the Prime Minister took. So while the Democratic Labour Party said last week through the mouth of its president that the international position does not matter, we don't live in a world by itself. Barbados is a micro state, and we have to position ourselves globally. The Barbados Labour Party manifesto speaks to being an advocate for small island developing states and being the voice of those of Black civilizations. And therefore, I think it is extremely important for the positioning of Barbados on the world stage, for accessing, whether it is funding and grants or advancing the position of Barbados, or generally position in small island developing states, it is of the utmost importance. And I do not think that there has been any other prime minister in my lifetime who has had the kind of international presence and respect that Prime Minister Motley wears.
So let me just jump in here. Then on the ground, let's just deal with the campaign in terms of strategy. The strategy of attacking the Prime Minister Motley, who has this type of international profile. What do you make of this strategy, Hartley Henry? Did it make sense? Did it work?
It's interesting that you asked that, because I'm still at a loss to understand the strategy of the Democratic Labour Party for 2022. What I saw initially was a resumption of the 2018 campaign. And it was very unfortunate in my view, because I would have thought, and certainly I guess now with ballot boxes closed, I can make a suggestion or two. Were I in that position, I perhaps would have been a little more all-embracing, a little more open to accommodations, rather than taking up the cudgel and taking up the swords and starting back and resuming the 2018 campaign. I would have thought first that an opposition party caught in the predicament that the Democratic Labour Party was caught in would have perhaps first sought some type of accommodation. Where I would have, certainly there would not be 1, 2, 3, 4 persons here tonight, because I would have thought that they would have sought some type of an accommodation with the other two, 3 parties at the time, certainly with the leader of the opposition, and try to get a cohesive opposition front. I would have thought also that rather than being very aggressive and in the destructive mode that was started at Waterford in 2018, that they perhaps would have sought some type of accommodation and alliances with the private sector. You had nurses on strike. You had you have a situation where one general secretary of one union has aligned herself and has aligned, that union is aligned with the governing party. And I would have thought certainly, and particularly since in the middle of the election, you had the president of the teachers union coming out and actually becoming a candidate for the Democratic Labour Party. I certainly would have thought that you would have tried to make some type of an accommodation with the opposition and the teachers, so that there could have been, you could have been, rather than just being a political party without a seat in George Street, I thought that you would have become more a party of national unity and national consensus and broaden, so that there could have been the perception of a national mood against the government. And I felt that the divisive approach assumed by the Democratic Labour Party was very mysterious. And I'm very eager tonight to see the dividends that it pays, because I have my doubts as to how effective it might perhaps have been in the final analysis, but we'll wait and see tonight what happens.
Well, let's bring back in Dr. George Bell again. And Dr. Bell, what's your take on this whole question of leadership, the way the Democratic Party approached it, the way some of the other parties approached it, and the impact that would have on how successful they will be tonight?
Well, I was making the point in St. Lucie, right, in relation to Bertha Peters' campaign there, that I saw a change in where she was at the beginning of the campaign and where she had reached at the end. In other words, I saw a growth of confidence and effectiveness on the platform. And therefore, we have to remember that the Democratic Labour Party was restructuring and rebuilding itself as it approached the third year outside of Parliament. And I think, therefore, that if you look at the manifesto, it says we want to build one Barbados. So there was an attempt as a mass Democratic Party to rebuild this front. And I cannot understand them ignoring the lesser parties, because the lesser parties are not mass Democratic parties. So I think that it is just that they were defeated so badly in 2018 that it's difficult to recover in 3 years. It would have been difficult for them to repair themselves in 5 years. And I think that they went traditional in seeking to struggle against Barbados Labour Party. by putting their leader against Ms. Motley, which I think would also fail. But that is what they tried because it was a part of the rebuilding of the party as a whole. And the campaign, in a sense, I think has helped the Democratic Labour Party to repair some of the damage that was done to it over the 10 years preceding the last general election.
Before I take you up on that point, I'll just bring in Trevor Seeley here because one of the things that was done is that the UPP and the Bishop Atherley's party, they joined forces and to form AP, the Alliance Party for Progress. What was the whole thinking behind it? Maybe you can tell us if that is, you felt that that was the way to go and the best way to go to be able to unseat the Barbados Labour Party. Did you think also about or even consider joining forces with the Democratic Labour Party or Solutions Barbados?
Well, the thing is, in the initial stages, we saw, the DLP is entrenched, and we saw a need to join together rather than being separate, and then you go into the situation where you're voting against each other. So come together, and that's what we did. And the thinking was that we'll be a better force to reckon with. There was no consideration of entertaining joining the DLP based on performance from previous years. But that was it. So we came together and we worked out infrastructure, a team that we'll see how the performance goes tonight.
Okay, but Solutions Barbados, they actually endorse a number of independent candidates. So why did Solutions Barbados do this? Was this consistent with the whole building of a coalition against the major parties?
Yes.
Grenville?
Yes, we did. We had a coalition of 3 parties. The idea initially was that we would run 10 and the other 2 would run 10, and that would give us 3 15-minute election broadcasts. The others didn't get that much, so Solutions Barbados was the only one then that had that 15-minute broadcast to talk to the nation. I did want to talk about the issue of leadership, though, because that's very important. At the last general election, there were 11 political parties, 9 of whom ran in the election. Something caused them to want to risk their personal and professional careers, these persons, and expose themselves to that level of scrutiny. So something caused us to want to do that, and we did it. And after the election, we gave our concession speech, and we explained, really, we just wanted to be heard on certain important matters. I remember Liz Thompson actually saying, Grenville will be heard. After that, the Prime Minister explained that all ideas must contend. Brilliant. We attended their swearing-in ceremony in Bay Street, and essentially laid our political swords at the feet of, or the disposal of, the Barbados Labour Party, to be used not against each other now, but to be used against the enemies of Barbados. And that's what we did. Perhaps we expected too much. Regardless of who wins tonight, I'm hoping that the government will call in these parties. Again, we admit we're not mass-based parties. We don't have the masses that the BLP and the DLP have, but something caused us, some issues were so fundamental to our core that we decided we will do this. So hopefully they will call in the parties, which is again what we plan to do as well, call in all the parties and find out, what are your major issues? What has caused you to do this? What are your major issues? What do you think is so fundamentally wrong with Barbados or that can be improved in Barbados that you would risk your personal and professional reputations like this? And listen to us. And we were promised that we will be listened to. We expect that promise then to be fulfilled sometime in our lifetime.
Well,
I expect a response
Granville,
from
we
Liz.
have to take a commercial
Yes.
break here at this time,
Yeah.
and we'll be right back.
Yes.
Owner. Great Health Works. Agents for Omega XL. Sleep Right. For the rest of your life, sleep right. The mattress professional for sleep. Lavada's Laundry Inc. Lavada's unmatched professional services. ProSecure Distributors Limited. The place for professional people. Career Development Institute. Empowering people, changing lives. Julie's Bridal Gowns. Julie's Bridal Rentals. Hall does it all. Pedialyte. Live hydrated and Glucerna. Live every moment.
We're back as Barbados decides 2022, and I can tell you that boxes are going into those counting stations fast and furious, and counting has started in a number of those stations as well. Let's go to Damien Best now. He is in the city at the Donald Headley Auditorium. Of course, that is the constituency being contested by a number of newcomers. Damien, tell me what's happening there.
Good evening to all viewers and listeners. I hope I'm coming through to you loud and clear. As you mentioned before, this is the fight for the capital, of course, the city of Bridgetown, and we're just outside the Donald Headley Auditorium. All the boxes have arrived. In fact, 3 bus loads of individuals and boxes all arrived here at the Donald Headley Auditorium, and the counting is yet to start. But of course, there are 4 candidates, as you mentioned before, vying for this seat. We've got 2 first-timers, the BLP's Corey and Marva Ashton of the Alliance Party. 11 polling districts, 47,000 votes. So we're looking forward to see how this one will turn out. We've also got a 20-year-old Kemar Stewart is in the running as well for the Democratic Labour Party, and we've got independent candidate Fallon Best. So, most honorable, Boston, stepping away from active politics, who will take over this very, very important seat. It's the capital, and we want to see what development and what plans the individual who does indeed win tonight will bring to the city. A number of the things that the constituents wanted covered was infrastructure, of course, jobs, one in there. Want to see business come back to the city as well. So a couple of the issues that the candidates have highlighted throughout the various campaigns. But so far, so good here. Good weather. We're outdoors, and we have to make some adjustments, of course, to our position here in the city. So nothing yet so far. All quiet here. I think we're probably just minutes away from getting the official counting started. But for now, it's all quiet, and we'll wait to see how things progress throughout the night. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Damien. And we'll wait to hear from you, as you said, as the counting gets started there in the city. So 4 candidates in that race. You have Corey Lane for the Barbados Labour Party, Kemar Stewart for the DLP, a newcomer in Corey Lane, Kemar Stewart, switching parties. Fallon Best is in there for Solutions Barbados as well, and Marva Lashley Todd for the APP. So, Sanka, this is an interesting race, but from what the analysts have been saying, they expect that the power that the Prime Minister has in attempting to draw supporters to the polls will help Corey Lane to win the city yet again.
Yeah, certainly Corey Lane has the name recognition, but is that enough to take him over the line? I think it may be. I've been on the ground a bit in the city, and I've been watching some of the reaction to Corey Lane. Kemar Stewart has also created some interest as well. But Corey Lane definitely, because of his level of involvement with the youth, and that goes back several years. And then, of course, he was dealing with the poverty alleviation as well. So Corey Lane definitely, I would think, is the front runner there. But I don't really want to focus on that now. I think we need to just conclude what we were discussing here about the third parties, because essentially, what has happened in Barbados now with these third parties, are they not just cutting votes? I mean, Hartley, what do you think? Aren't they just cutting votes? They don't do well. I've heard Grenville on this. I've heard Trevor on this with the Alliance. But essentially, in this election, I think, based on what we've seen over the years, over the several elections, that all third parties do is cut the votes of the major parties, like the Barbados Labour Party and the Democratic Labour Party.
Yeah, I'm not sure that they actually are going to cut votes tonight. I think that it is unfortunate that, as I said, as indicated earlier, I would have thought that in a snap election environment such as this, there would have been some type of an accommodation. I think it is a case more of they're providing perspectives that are welcome and for healthy discussion. But in terms of being serious electoral forces, I don't consider any of them to be serious electoral forces. I think Barbadians are pretty clear that the two options are available to them. And I believe that at some point, these fledgling parties will have to review their position. I know that the leader of Solutions Barbados didn't contest a seat on this occasion, and perhaps that may very well be the way to go, where you can exist as an entity, as a
pressure group.
I stop short of using the term pressure group, but you can exist and play a relevant role and make a significant contribution without contesting seats. And that would certainly be my suggestion going forward. And I suspect it might very well be the option that they may take after tonight.
But let's bring in Pearson here. How does the Democrat look at these third parties, like Solutions Barbados and the Alliance?
The Democratic Labour Party is the party of the people. And we believe that if there are third parties, we welcome them to cast their vote for us. But if you're not a mass-based party, let's be realistic. If you're not a mass-based party, you're not going to really make an impact. You're not going to make an impact on the electorate. So as far as their ideologies would match up with the ideals of the Democratic Labour Party, yes, we can see them. We welcome them to the fold, but we wouldn't join forces with any third party or ask them to join us only to support us and giving us their vote. We welcome that support, and Solutions Barbados, give us your vote along with the coalition, the alliance, sorry. That's what we wanted.
You also wanted to make a point earlier that when we were off air, you said you wanted to respond to something that Dr. Bell said.
Yes,
Could you do that now?
Yes, Dr. Bell had alluded to the fact that I had said that those who were disenfranchised related to St. Lucie, where the president of the Democratic Labour Party will win that seat. What I meant was that there was this consensus on the ground throughout Barbados, not only St. Lucie, that it was not fair to disenfranchise voters, where accommodations were made in other territories. Also here in Barbados, policemen vote early, electoral workers vote early. There are ways to accommodate persons who are in isolation. If other territories can do it, we can. We could have also. It was just a lack of political will. And I read an article that says it will be a dirty stain on Barbados.
That article must have been written, if I may, by a fellow Dem, and I have no doubt that there probably was. But the reality is that you are dealing with a highly contagious disease, and the Electoral and Boundaries Commission made a decision. I don't want it to go on the record unchallenged that this had to do with a lack of political will. The EBC, Electoral and Boundaries Commission, had the matter in hand. They made the decision. There have been elections in the Caribbean where since the pandemic, St. Lucia, St. Kitts, Jamaica. And the thing is, the question as to whether Prime Minister Motley should have called at all, which Pearson raised earlier because of Omicron, or Omicron, whichever pronunciation one prefers. The reality is that looking ahead, we don't know what other variants they're going to be, or how bad they're going to get, or what is going to happen in relation to COVID. So I don't think that that was a valid reason for not calling the election. I mean, the reality is that in the Westminster system of government, which we have traditionally followed, a prime minister calls an election and they have complete discretion on this at any time during the 5-year term that best suits their advantage, full stop.
Yes.
That's just the reality. And if I may, very quickly, I don't see the newer parties as cutting votes. I think that they are bringing useful perspectives and new discussion and some new ideas to the table, and that they have value. And certainly once we are re-elected, there needs to be discussion and perhaps some of these ideas embraced, because we are attempting to govern in the pursuit of a better Barbados, in the pursuit of the best Barbados. And we don't think that all of the talent resides on our side. So that if there are ideas, suggestions, or solutions that can be shared, we are willing to embrace and to utilize and to include persons of goodwill.
Grenville would like to respond to that.
Yes, but I thank Liz for that, the ambassador. And I also thank Dr. Bell for his advice, which has now been endorsed by Democratic Labour Party's representative here. So I can say, regardless of how this election pans out, we will have to become a mass-based party. And that's then, it depends. If we do well, it means that we would already develop a certain amount of mass. Otherwise, we will become a mass-based party for the next general election. But we are all hopeful now. None of us know how the electorate will vote. We hope, we plan, we have measured certain things, but the people will decide.
Well, it seems that it was a low voter turnout. And I'm wondering, Dr. Bell, who stands to be the winner here? Who stands to be the loser with such a low voter turnout?
We're going to have to wait and see what the results are telling us. Because on the one hand, if what would keep Barbados Labour Party supporters home is complacency, while the Democratic Labour Party will stay home because they think they can win. So those two dimensions are involved here, but we are only going to be able to read that when we see how the parties are performing and whether we can link staying at home with one or the other, or whether it has spread across both. So that is really what we will have to watch.
Prime Minister Motley made the point today when she went to vote that, in fact, she expressed some concern that her actual supporters were not coming out to vote. And let's look at that after we take this commercial break.
tested positive for COVID-19. Within 1 day, I started this on the Wednesday, and by Saturday,
Decides 2022, and we're getting a lot of interesting perspectives, and this is a good time to bring in another leading analyst in Peter Wickham in what I call Peter's take. So I had an interesting discussion with him, Sanka, on a lot of the elements involved in this general election and really leading up to today's poll. So he has been giving me his take on the strategies of the individual parties going into this January 19th general election. Take a listen.
Election is interesting and fascinating and historic, and I think that this is an election that has come down to a question of voter turnout and getting people out to the polls in the context of what's been going on in terms of COVID. Certainly, since the election has started, what I've been hearing from people on the ground is a concern over whether or not the candidates should vote. In terms of the impact that COVID is having and the kind of campaign that appears to be low-key, largely because it's a campaign being conducted online. But I would say at the broad level, the Democratic Labour Party has come across as ill-prepared, which is unsurprising. The Barbados Labour Party has been presenting the image of a party that is prepared and ready to resume office. I think that the Democratic Labour Party's appeal to what we could call the Kadir vote, or the idea that we should have an opposition, has not been as strong as one would have expected. And I think that that is something that they haven't exploited as heavily as they could. And they've been going for the jugular, they've been going for the government, and it will be interesting to see how it will be reflected. As far as people are concerned, you're hearing views on both sides in terms of people's concerns being reflected on both sides. But I think the general prevailing concern is, how would this operate in terms of COVID?
So a number of points to unpack there, Sanka. When you look at how this election has been conducted, you talked about the preparedness of the Barbados Labour Party ready to govern. However, on the other side, the Democratic Labour Party struggling to stand up and match what the Barbados Labour Party has been doing, according to what is one of our leading pollsters here.
Yes, Shane, and that is one of the things that we really have to examine now. And I'd like to wrap that up, Hartley, with the whole idea of what I was speaking about before we went to that, where the Prime Minister Motley made the point that she was concerned that she was not able to bring out the vote. And you've heard Peter Wickham's assessment as well. What do you make about this?
Yes, I'm a bit concerned as well, because I somehow differ with Dr. Bell in that I believe straight out, I think that this was a kind of election, a strange election scenario, where I believe that a low poll would have assisted the Democratic Labour Party. A very low poll, I should say. I think a medium poll in terms of anything over 44, 45, in a COVID environment, I think anything over 44 so would be considered a moderate turnout. And that, I think, that is from there, you're beginning to see a surge as far as the incumbency is concerned. So I believe that I can understand where perhaps the Prime Minister would have been at midday, concerned with respect to what appeared to have been a very low turnout. But from my observations during the course of the day, I get the impression that it may have picked up. And by the first couple of boxes tonight, we'll get a feel as to what the turnout was. And I'm thinking that anything over for 44, 45, I would begin to believe should, to my mind, trend in favor of the incumbent. I don't, because as you correctly, as was said earlier, I'm not sure that the Democratic Labour Party provided an alternative option I never sensed a surge in the country. There was no movement in the country for the embrace of the Democratic Labour Party. It would be a case in which the base of the Barbados Labour Party, or the swing support that the Barbados Labour Party enjoyed in 2018 did not turn out, and you would have had the two bases contending. And in that case, I would have thought that the Democratic Labour Party would have considered itself in with a pretty good chance if it was just a question of the basis. That's why, again, I was a bit concerned, a bit curious with the argument that was raised by the representative here with respect to the whole question of persons in isolation and what have you. Unless they know something that I don't know. I don't know if 80% of the COVID persons in isolation are all Democratic Labour Party members and supporters. But I don't know. I do not think that getting more mass support would have benefited the Democratic Labour Party, because when you look at it, and that's why I said earlier, I would have perhaps you had opportunity to have the leader of the opposition, a known figure, over 15, 20 years political experience. You had Lynette Eastman running for the APP and others. What you had on the Democratic Labour Party was a situation where they came with 5 former persons who would serve in the past, and then 25 unknowns. I'm not sure that that was the best formula that to have presented the country at this time in this situation. And the election has come and gone, and you still don't know anything about the other 25. And what you know about the 5 really has not changed from 2018. So it's just a situation where I thought that a low turnout, to my mind, would have provided the base of the Democratic Labour Party to come into its own and to perhaps have snatched a couple seats, which I suspect the afternoon surge now, the 4 to 6 p.m. surge that we saw this evening, and with balloting continuing beyond 6 p.m. because persons were in the line, I think that was the beginning of the slipping of the election away, in my estimation.
All right, Harley, we'll pick up that point after this commercial break.
Barbados Decides. Coverage of the 2022 general elections on the stations of the CBC is sponsored by Amaze Inc. Come in and be amazed. We have what you need. Cooperators General Insurance Company Limited. You are not just a policyholder, you are an owner. Great Health Works. Agents for Omega XL. Sleep Right. For the rest of your life, sleep right. The mattress professional for sleep. Lavada's Laundry Inc. Lavada's unmatched professional services. ProSecure Distributors Limited, the place for professional people. Career Development Institute, empowering people, changing lives. Julie's Bridal Gowns, Julie's Bridal Rentals, one call, does it all. Pedialyte, live hydrated, and Glucerna, live every moment.
We're back with you on Barbados Decides 2022. A lot of interesting discussion so far, and that will continue throughout the night. Let's now go over to our very own Shane Jones. He is live at BLP headquarters, a place that Liz Thompson is very familiar with there in... I want to get the street right because I don't want to mix up... at Bradley Adams' house there in number 11 Robert Street. Shane Jones. Shane, how are things looking over there? Okay, we are trying to connect with Shane, who is at Grantley Adams' house there. We are hearing that activity is picking up, and activity is picking up across the country. There we see him. Shane, what's the mood like there at BLP headquarters?
Guys, everyone watching at home, you guys in the studio.
Trying to connect with Shane, who is at Grantley Adams' house there. We are hearing that activity is picking up, and activity is picking up across the country. There we see him. Shane. Okay, we appear to have some technical difficulties there, Sanka, but we'll definitely get back to Shane to see what is happening. We expect that BLP supporters will start to gather as we start to hear some of those results coming from those counting stations, Sanka.
Thank you, Shane. Pearson wanted to respond to the statements just made by Hartley. And Pearson, I turn it over to you.
Thank you, Sanka. I totally disagree with my friend Hartley Henry on his assessment of the performance of the Democratic Labour Party in this election. Now, Prime Minister Motley did make a true statement when she said that she's concerned about her supporters not coming out. There's a there's a low voter turnout on behalf of the supporters of the Barbados Labour Party.
The votes haven't been counted yet. You don't
The
know
Democrat,
that.
please. The Democratic Labour Party, on the other hand, we've had high voter turnouts of our supporters, and we've gotten out the vote. So I believe that we're in for a surprise and shock when the results come in. And also, despite the fact that the Barbados Labour Party employ its high-tech election machinery with lots of money, billboards, social media, high-tech campaigns with big stages that cost quite a bit of money. They outspend the Democratic Labour Party, but the results and the returns will not reflect that. Thank you.
What a statement. What a statement. Liz, I think you need to say something.
I'm just sorry I don't walk with my smelling salts person. I think that Pearson is speaking with a high level of optimism, and I understand that he must. But until the votes are counted, he cannot say definitively that he got out his supporters and we didn't get out ours. He speaks of shock and surprise at the end of the night. Pearson, I only hope it's not yours, my friend. I saw it last time with Curry Cox, but I will hold you up, I will bear you up. As you I don't know what else to say, really, except to sort of make fun at it. We now have to wait until the vote's coming to start to make judgments. We don't even have a pattern or a trend yet because we have no box results. So I think that it's a little precipitous to make these kind of very broad statements. And I want to make, though, a little more serious point, and it's this. And we will see if I'm right as the night emerges. I have found, I said it last election, that the Democratic Labour Party has a tendency to mix the Kool-Aid, add extra sugar, and get high on it, dividing it amongst themselves. They seem to... I mean, when I did my MBA, you learned about this phenomenon groupthink, which is great for the cohesiveness and cohesion of an organization, but is also fundamentally dangerous because they don't listen to alternative views or opinions. They just reinforce each other. And I see that repeatedly in the Democratic Labour Party in the way that it develops propaganda and then behaves as if the propaganda is truth. And I'm hearing this tonight, and we're going to see how it plays out. But it has really an important point beyond my saying so, because if I am right about this, and the Democratic Labour Party does not perform well tonight, but has this very strong belief that it has done exceptionally well so that the country is going to be in shock and surprise and so on, then the Democratic Labour Party has to go back to the drawing board and ask itself, to whom is it listening, and is it learning the lessons that the electorate and the people of Barbados have been trying to share with them since 2018?
And if the Democratic Labour Party does do well, how would you respond to that?
My response would be this, Pearson. So we're turning to face each other. If the Democratic Labour Party does do well, I think then the Barbados Labour Party would have to ask itself, what did we do wrong? And that would be a really important question for us to assess and determine and to course correct, because clearly you would have done something wrong. But I think that there is another element that is very important to assess here. And it will, I think, be interesting to see how the public responds. This was the election of the big bad wolf. The election was called because something big and bad is about to happen. So you had to call the election now before this big bad thing happened. the leader of the Barbados Labour Party is a big bad despot, a big bad dictator. You got to stop associating with her for the sake of the country, etc. This is a real dangerous time to have election. You got COVID, you know, people gonna get sick. This is gonna be a super spreader. So it was an election about creating a tremendous amount of fear in the minds of the public and the electorate. And I think that it will be interesting to see the extent to which that has impacted voters in terms of the turnout and in terms of the result.
They respond to
Yes.
my colleague.
You join in the
Sorry, no,
colleague,
my fellow panelist, sorry. What I will say though is that what I've noticed, because I canvass on the ground in St. Lucie and other constituencies, and I don't know, I wouldn't say it was the supporters of the Democratic Labour Party, but there's this campaign strategy of the DLP where they will put the poster of Prime Minister Motley above the candidate. And persons were actually tearing down the poster of Miss Motley. And I don't know which side they were on, but what I'm saying is that has never happened in 2018. It didn't happen, I never witnessed it before, but that I saw with my own two eyes. Secondly, I saw desperation from Prime Minister Motley in respect of the St. Lucie seat. I saw Prime Minister Motley in St. Lucie no fewer than 4 times per week, and up until the last week, 7, 8 times, more than twice per day and all that in St. Lucie, different parts of St. Lucie with a candidate. I have never seen that kind of desperation before. And just now we saw BLP headquarters, and we saw Shane Jones and no supporters. In 2018, when it was 9 o'clock, when the boxes were in, actually supporters followed the boxes to the campaign headquarters, to the BLP headquarters. That is not the case tonight. That raises serious questions for me.
Just let me come in here because we're going to go back to DLP headquarters, as our DLP representative here just mentioned, to see what is happening there with Shane Jones. Shane, hopefully you can hear me now. So we're trying to reach our Shane Jones at BLP headquarters, and we're hearing about some counting and possibly some results already. So we'll get that information for you in short order. So Sanka, we're trying to connect with Shane to see what the atmosphere is like there.
Yes, yes, Shane. The thing about it is that I would think at this time we're hearing that there's some results coming back, so we're listening out for that. Until that happens, what we're going to do is we're going to continue our conversation here, because Hartley, you're saying that the Pearson from the DLP and Liz from the BLP, they're going at each other. They're both convinced that their party is going to prevail. The feeling I get on the ground certainly is that, yes, people want the Barbados Labour Party to continue, since they would have done a lot of work over the last 3.5 years. But they are concerned that this election was called in the first place, and they're wondering why. Maybe you can help us here by what is the strategy going on here?
Perhaps I should defer to the Barbados Labour Party representative on the panel.
She's just talking about the big bad wolf, you know.
I'm curious in some of what I'm hearing here, because I'm hearing, for example, the question of the presence of the Prime Minister's photograph across the country, which is a natural regular thing. But what was very interesting was the absence of the photograph or the poster of the leader of the opposition party, the prime minister in waiting, the person who is hoping tomorrow morning to be sworn in as prime minister. And that to me was the first time in Barbados' history that you had a situation where technically there was only one prime ministerial candidate in an election, because no one outside of St. Lucie can show you any image whatsoever of the leader of the Democratic Labour Party. And this persistence with the notion of a president of a party, I think that that was a fundamental error on the part of the Democratic Labour Party in 2022. To go into an election without a declared political leader, without some certainty as to who the prime minister would be, that really was unacceptable. And I would believe, and I would be quite surprised if tonight the campaign of the Democratic Labour Party prevails in a circumstance where the question of leadership was not settled. And the fact that my associate is speaking about a president. We've never spoken about a president of a party in Barbados before. There's one president of Barbados, and she was sworn in on November 30th. So I'm at a loss as to what the strategy there was. With respect to the drives, I can understand the optimism, but certainly from my experience, and I think there are a couple of years I have under my belt, you normally can feel a wave in a country. You can feel something. You can feel a movement. In 1966, and 1986, and 1994, with the collapse of the government, in 2008, in 2018, you felt something. I don't know what you're feeling, but I certainly don't feel as if Barbadians went out today to vote in a new government. And if they did not go out to vote in a government, then I'm not sure where your optimism, what is spurring your optimism.
They went to vote in opposition.
But if they went to vote in opposition, then they would also have come out. The fact, and that's why I'm suggesting that anything over a very low turnout, which is perhaps lower 30s, I find that the Democratic Labour Party is likely to struggle in a situation where persons went out, because you did not get the impression that there was something on the table that the swing voter could have taken hold of.
Dr. Bell, let's bring you in here and your comments on this as well.
Well, the Democratic Labour Party was unable to say that it had a political because it had no parliamentary presence. And the closest that came to having a leader was the person that was holding the position of president in the party. And Mr. DePisa did hold off to challenges, but she has not emerged as the unquestioned leader of the Democratic Labour Party. The natural leader of the Democratic Labour Party said that he was attending his plants in his garden. And that is a classic withdrawal by a potential political leader. You keep very quiet, and when the party calls you, not when you grasp for leadership. When you grasp for leadership, you're told to go to the back of the class. The person who is keeping very quiet on his side is a natural leader. And we know who that is.
Yes, Dr. Yes, Pearson. Pearson wants to respond. Before Liz, you can go after that.
Thank you.
Right. The supporters of the Dear Loving Party, the Democratic Labour Party, we are aware who our leader is, and there's no dispute as to who she is. So it's not my fault that other persons are not aware. And after tonight, there'll be no question in the minds of Barbadians or the rest of the world who the leader of the Democratic Labour Party is. Thank you.
I listened to Dr. Dave Leswin and I never heard. I listened to Lucie and I never heard. I listened to Michael Lashley and I never heard. So I'm not sure. I listened to Dennis Lowe and I never heard who this leader was. So I don't know.
What do you make of this, Liz?
I think that if you pick up the Nation newspaper of December 17th, the Democratic Labour Party candidates themselves said on a front page story that they did not want Ms. DePisa to lead them. And in fact, the only reason that she did is because the snap election was called and they did not have an opportunity to resolve their leadership issues. That's one. Second, the reality is that Ms. DePisa is almost a leader without a party, or the party has a leader without a party, or a party without a leader. I don't know which is more accurate. The reality is that Ms. DePisa has no seat. Ms. DePisa has run in repeated elections and been rejected in every constituency in which she has run. She has no political base. And I said on the political platform that the only thing left for her to do is to go to the cement plant, get a boat, and go to Africa to see if she can get a seat there. But clearly the people of Barbados do not want her. Let me also say that Ms. DePisa, I'm going to use an old-time expression from my father. He used to talk about people filling or not filling your eyes. Tonight, we will find out whether Ms. DePisa fills the eyes of the people of St. Lucie and the rest of Barbados, or if she does not. I think it's the latter. And my final point is going back to what Pearson said earlier about the fact that Ms. Motley, Prime Minister Motley, was repeatedly in St. Lucie. She can go because she has name recognition and presence. If Ferla DePisa walks down the street, nobody knows who she is. Nobody could point at her and say, hey, look her there, look her there. Nobody knows her. So as Prime Minister and as leader of a political party, she went to ensure that her candidate, who was running against the alleged political leader of the Democratic Labour Party, was secure in his base. And that is good politics, and it's good. She fulfilled her responsibility to her candidate in St. Lucie in a constituency that is not traditionally one that supports the Barbados Labour Party. She did what she was supposed to do. I heard Pearson talking about all of the people in St. Lucie with whom they had discussion. They must have been talking to the Duppies in St. Lucie Parish Church. I can't imagine where they could be getting these opinions from.
Well, we should certainly see as the results come back in, and we expect to get some results pretty soon. Let's go.
Oh, but I can tell you some, we are beating y'all bad so far. Every result I have.
Okay. Well, we will soon get our results coming up shortly, so just stay with us. Grenville, just let's take it.
Would you like me to share them with you?
No. Grenville, let's please tell us. You were actually endorsing independent candidates, and we had a situation where a person was being endorsed by Solutions Barbados as well as another party. That is part of the whole confusion here. What's this all about?
Yes, it's not confusion. We ran 10 candidates and I believe we endorsed 8 others. And we endorsed candidates who agreed generally with Solutions Barbados' policies and the 2 critical things that we asked for. One is that the Charter of Barbados, which essentially, I mean, there's a separation of